Jason Carter pulled into the parking lot of Regency Motors, the flagship dealership he had recently acquired in Phoenix, Arizona. The late afternoon sun shimmered off the polished exteriors of high-end cars, their deep metallic paints reflecting the desert heat. He found an unmarked spot near the back and parked his black Ford Explorer, a vehicle that blended in rather than stood out. Dressed in a navy hoodie, well-worn jeans, and a pair of Nikes, Jason stepped out and took a moment to study the dealership's sleek glass facade. He didn't look like the kind of customer Regency Motors usually catered to, and that was exactly the point. He wanted to see the business for what it truly was, how it operated when no one knew the new boss was watching. As he walked toward the entrance, he spotted a group of employees gathered near the front desk. Laughter carried through the glass doors, their conversation light and easy. The moment he stepped inside, the crisp, air-conditioned air wrapped around him, carrying the faint scent of leather and fresh wax. The laughter faded. Jason felt it immediately. The quick glances, the almost imperceptible shift in energy. Employees exchanged looks, their eyes flicking to his hoodie, his sneakers, his overall appearance. The kind of scrutiny that spoke volumes without a single word being said. But Jason wasn't here to jump to conclusions. He was here to observe. Then from across the showroom she appeared. A woman in her early 50s, with sharp features and an even sharper gaze, strode toward him with purpose. Her charcoal gray blazer, perfectly tailored slacks, and polished heels spoke of authority. A clipboard tucked under her arm added an extra layer of efficiency. Her smile was polite, at least at first. She stopped a few feet in front of Jason, her heels clicking against the showroom's glossy floor. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cool, clipped. "Can I help you with something?" Jason met her gaze, his expression relaxed. "Just looking around." He gestured toward the gleaming lineup of cars. Her eyes flicked over him again, scanning from his sneakers to his hoodie. The polite mask slipped, just for a second, replaced by something more reserved. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, the slight edge in her tone impossible to miss. Jason nodded, still smiling. "Something like that?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "We cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend—" A voice interrupted her. "Hey, Olivia, the delivery guy is here." For just a moment her attention wavered, but her gaze snapped right back to Jason, as if making sure he wouldn't wander too far. Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" The question caught her off guard, but only for a second. She straightened her posture. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied with a carefully measured smile. "These vehicles start in the six-figure range. Maybe I can direct you to—" Jason's expression remained unreadable, but internally he noted every word, every assumption. The quiet sting of her judgment wasn't new to him, but that didn't make it any less frustrating. He turned slightly, running his fingers along the sleek silver coupe beside him. Its aggressive design, its perfectly polished finish, everything about it exuded power. "Nice car," he said. Olivia hesitated. "It is. Perhaps when you're ready to make a serious inquiry, we can set up an appointment. For now, I'll have to ask you not to touch the vehicles." Jason stepped back, sliding his hands into his pockets. He gave her a slow nod. "All right, let's hear it then. What would you recommend for someone like me?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard by the directness of his question, but before she could respond, Jason added, "If you think you know what I need, I'm all ears." Her polite mask cracked, just a little. "Maybe something more budget-friendly. I can give you directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Jason let out a quiet chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's quite the assumption," he said softly. The moment lingered, the weight of his words settling between them. Olivia hesitated, then stiffened. "I'll be back with a list of options," she said briskly, turning on her heel and walking away. Jason watched her go, his expression unreadable. He turned back to the silver coupe, his reflection staring back at him in the glossy finish. This was going to be an interesting day. Whoever has watched up to this minute, comment, "I'm still here." Jason stood in the center of the showroom, hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting over the luxury vehicles on display. Around him, the staff had resumed their conversations, though he caught the occasional glance in his direction. The kind of scrutiny he was all too familiar with. The silent judgment, the coded looks. A few minutes later, Olivia returned, her clipboard clutched tightly as though it were a shield. Her brisk stride and forced smile betrayed her impatience. "All right," she said, stopping just a few feet away. "I've compiled a few options that might be more suitable for your situation." Jason tilted his head slightly. "My situation?" She nodded, her tone clipped as she handed him a printout. "These are more accessible models, reliable, economical, and practical." Jason unfolded the paper and scanned the list. A used sedan, an older SUV, a compact hybrid. His lips twitched in faint amusement, but he quickly hid it, folding the paper and tucking it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said evenly. For the first time, Olivia seemed momentarily disarmed by his response, but she quickly recovered, shifting her weight onto one foot, her hands resting on her hips. "Look," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Regency Motors isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Jason met her gaze, his expression calm but unwavering. "And what exactly makes you think I'm not your target customer?" She hesitated, but only for a split second. "I've been doing this a long time," she said finally. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." Jason repeated her words slowly, almost thoughtfully. "Out of my depth." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she pushed on. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront than have someone leave disappointed." Jason let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "Honest, huh? I like honesty. How about this? You let me speak to the owner. Think we can make that happen?" Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "The owner?" "That's right," Jason said, his tone light, almost conversational. "I'd like to have a word with them." Her lips twitched into an awkward smile. "Well, that's not possible today. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a busy person." Jason nodded slightly. "I'm sure they are. But maybe you could give them a call, let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Her smile tightened. The frustration she had been trying to keep in check started to seep through. "Look, sir, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our sales consultants. Otherwise," Jason's gaze remained steady. "Otherwise what?" She squared her shoulders. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, thick with implication. Jason stood still, his eyes locked on hers for a long moment. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contacts. Olivia's brows furrowed. "What are you doing?" "Just calling the owner," Jason replied, lifting the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." Her confidence faltered. Confusion flickered across her face as she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around them, a few employees had stopped what they were doing, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. Jason held up a finger, as if to say, "Just a moment," then turned slightly away, speaking into the phone. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine. Just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning back to Olivia. "They'll be here shortly," he said simply. The tension in the room was palpable. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, her composure beginning to crack. Minutes passed, but the room felt frozen in time. The sound of the main doors opening cut through the heavy silence. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking softly against the tile floor. His expression was serious but warm, and his eyes immediately found Jason. "Mr. Carter," the man said with a wide smile, extending his hand as he approached. "So good to see you." Jason returned the handshake with a firm grip, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thanks for coming, Alex. Appreciate it." The room collectively stiffened. Olivia's clipboard nearly slipped from her hands as her eyes darted between Jason and Alex, the dealership's regional director. Her confusion quickly morphed into visible alarm. "Wait," she stammered. "Mr. Carter?" Alex turned to her, his friendly demeanor shifting into something more professional, almost curt. Olivia, I see you've already met Mr. Carter. She blinked, her mouth opening and closing as though searching for the right words. I... I didn't realize... You didn't realize he's the new owner of this dealership, Alex finished for her, his tone sharp. The weight of those words settled over the showroom like a heavy fog. Olivia paled, taking a small step back as she clutched her clipboard to her chest. Jason let the moment linger before finally breaking the silence. It's all right, Alex. I think Olivia and I just got off on the wrong foot. His voice was calm, measured, but there was a weight behind it, one that made everyone in the room hang on to his words. Olivia's face turned ashen. I'm so sorry, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. Jason tilted his head slightly. Didn't know what? That I could own a place like this? That someone like me might actually belong here? Her eyes widened, and for the first time since their interaction began, she looked utterly lost. I didn't mean... Jason held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. It's fine, Olivia, really. He took a step closer, his voice dropping just enough to make everyone lean in. But let me ask you something. If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have given me the same respect you'd give someone who walked in here wearing a suit and tie? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence that followed was deafening. Jason gave a slow nod, as if her silence was answer enough. Then turning to Alex, his voice carried a new authority. Let's gather everyone in the conference room. I think it's time we had a little talk about how things are run around here. Without another word, Alex gestured to the employees, who quickly began filing toward the back. The sleek, glass-walled conference room, usually reserved for high-end clients and corporate meetings, suddenly felt claustrophobic. Olivia took a seat near the back, her usual confident demeanor now replaced with nervous stillness. Jason stood at the head of the table, calm, composed, in control. His presence commanded the attention of every person in the room. Alex remained near the door, arms crossed, observing in silence. Jason let the tension settle before finally speaking. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Carter, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Regency Motors. A ripple of surprise spread across the room. Some employees exchanged uneasy glances, while others sat frozen in place, their expressions a mix of curiosity and embarrassment. Jason continued, his voice steady. I came here today dressed casually for a reason. I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to experience what a potential customer might feel walking through these doors. He let that statement sink in. What I experienced today was disappointing. His words were calm but carried weight, and the impact was immediate. I was judged not for what I could bring to the table, but for how I looked. And I'm not here to single anyone out, but we need to talk about what that says about the culture of this dealership. Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face flushed with embarrassment. Jason's gaze flicked to her for just a second before addressing the entire group again. This isn't just about me, he said. It's about every person who walks through those doors. Every customer who doesn't fit into someone's preconceived notion of what a luxury car buyer looks like. A younger sales associate hesitated, then raised his hand. Jason gave him a nod. Go ahead. Mr. Carter, the man began nervously, I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. Jason nodded thoughtfully. I get that. We all have biases whether we want to admit it or not. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases. We have to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance, background, or anything else. The room was silent, but the shift was palpable. Jason straightened, looking around the table. This dealership has built a reputation for excellence. But excellence isn't just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. There was a ripple of agreement, though a few faces remained wary. Jason's gaze settled on Olivia, who sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Olivia, he said gently but firmly, I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say? All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. I, I made a mistake. She swallowed hard, cheeks flushed. I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Jason studied her for a moment before finally nodding. Thank you for saying that. His expression remained unreadable. I hope this experience serves as a reminder for all of us. Not just you, because change starts with accountability. He turned back to the group. Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership represents the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity. No exceptions. The room remained silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Jason let the quiet stretch just long enough before speaking again. Good, he said. I'm glad we're all on the same page. Change wasn't always easy, but it was necessary, and Regency Motors was about to lead by example. The employees of Regency Motors sat in silence, the tension in the conference room thick enough to cut with a knife. The sleek glass walls and modern furnishings, meant to project an air of exclusivity, now felt almost suffocating. At the head of the table, Jason Carter stood calm and composed, his presence commanding the room. He had seen enough today to understand what needed to change, and now it was time to make that clear. Alex, the regional director, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he observed the staff. Near the back, Olivia, the dealership's sales manager, sat rigid in her chair, her clipboard now resting on the table, forgotten. Jason let the silence settle before he spoke. Thank you all for joining me on short notice, he said, his voice steady but firm. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Carter, and as of last month, I am the new owner of Regency Motors. A few murmurs rippled through the room, employees exchanging uneasy glances. Some looked surprised, others embarrassed. Olivia sat frozen, staring down at the table. Jason continued, his gaze sweeping across the group. I came in today dressed the way I did for a reason. I wanted to see this dealership for what it really is. Not as the owner, not as someone you've been told to impress, just as another person walking through the doors. He let that sink in before continuing. And what I experienced today was disappointing. The room stiffened. No one moved. No one spoke. I wasn't judged based on my knowledge, my interest, or my ability to purchase a car. I was judged on my appearance. I was treated differently because I didn't fit the mold of what you expected a Regency Motors customer to look like. A few employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jason's voice wasn't loud, but every word carried weight. Now, I want to be clear, he said. This isn't about calling people out or shaming anyone. This is about culture. And culture isn't just what we put on a mission statement. It's how we treat every single person who walks through that door. Whether they're in a suit or a hoodie, whether they pull up in a sports car or a family SUV. His eyes locked onto Olivia for just a second before moving back to the rest of the team. Because you never know who you're talking to. More importantly, you never know what kind of impression you're leaving. A younger sales associate hesitated before raising his hand. Jason nodded toward him. Mr. Carter, the man began, his voice cautious. I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes, well, it's hard not to make assumptions. Jason nodded. I get that. We all have biases, whether we realize it or not. But it's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge our biases. And that starts with changing the way we think about our customers. He glanced around the table. So let me ask you all a question. How many of you have ever judged a customer based on what they were wearing, or the car they drove, or the way they spoke? The room was silent, but the silence was telling. Jason leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. Here's the thing. Regency Motors has built a reputation for excellence. But excellence isn't just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. There was a murmur of agreement, hesitant at first but growing. A few employees nodded. Others looked thoughtful. Jason's gaze found Olivia again. Olivia, he said gently, I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say? All eyes turned to her. She hesitated. The once confident sales manager who had dismissed Jason not an hour ago now looked uncertain. almost vulnerable. Finally, she cleared her throat. I, I made a mistake, she admitted, her voice quiet. I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Jason studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. Thank you for saying that, he said. But I want to be clear, this isn't just about one moment. It's about changing the way we do business. He turned to the group. Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to make sure that everyone who walks into this dealership is treated with the same level of respect and professionalism, regardless of how they look or what we assume about them. He let his words settle before continuing. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, no exceptions. And if anyone has an issue with that, he paused, scanning the room. Now's the time to speak up. The silence was deafening. Jason nodded. Good. I'm glad to see we're all on the same page. He took a step back from the table, looking at each employee before adding, change isn't always easy, but it's necessary, and Regency Motors is going to lead by example. The tension in the room began to shift, replaced by a new energy, one of reflection, maybe even determination. Employees sat a little straighter. A few exchanged small nods. Even Alex, who had remained quiet through most of the meeting, gave Jason an approving glance. Olivia, still seated near the back, finally looked up. Her expression had softened. She wasn't the same person who had judged Jason at the showroom entrance. Jason met her gaze and gave her a single nod, a silent acknowledgement, a second chance. And with that, the meeting was over. As the meeting wrapped up, the employees sat in reflective silence. The weight of Jason's words still hung in the air. Change was coming to Regency Motors, and everyone in that room knew it. Jason took a step away from the table, his hands resting lightly on its edge as he leaned forward slightly. Let me make something clear, he said, his voice calm but firm. I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand what kind of culture I've inherited and how we can make it better. His gaze swept across the room, pausing briefly on Olivia. She sat quietly, hands clasped together, her once confident posture replaced with something more subdued. Olivia, Jason said, his tone softening just enough to show he wasn't looking to attack her. You're an experienced manager. I'm sure you've worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call, for you and for all of us. She looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. I understand, she said, her voice steady but laced with regret. I was wrong, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Jason nodded slowly. I believe in second chances, he said simply, but accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you one-on-one to discuss next steps. A flicker of something crossed Olivia's face. Maybe relief, maybe apprehension, but she nodded in understanding. Jason straightened, turning his attention back to the rest of the staff. Moving forward, we're not just selling cars, he continued. We're building trust. We're creating relationships. And we're representing a standard of excellence that goes beyond what's on the showroom floor. He let his words settle for a moment. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way. If you're not, this might not be the right place for you. The room was silent, but this time, it wasn't from discomfort. It was understanding. The shift had begun. Alex, who had been standing by the door, finally spoke. You heard the man, he said, a faint grin playing at the corners of his mouth. This is the start of something new. Let's make it count. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Employees exchanged glances, some nodding, some looking determined. Even those who had been wary at first now seemed to be buying in. Jason exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. It wasn't just talk, they were listening. All right then, he said, stepping back. Let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell. As the employees began filing out, Jason caught Olivia lingering by the door. She hesitated, then approached him, her hands twisting nervously. Mr. Carter, she began, her voice low. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down. Jason studied her for a moment before responding, his voice steady. I hope you mean that, Olivia. Actions speak louder than words. But I believe people can change, if they're willing to try. She nodded, her expression earnest. I am. Jason watched her leave before turning to Alex. Let's set up a meeting with the staff next week, he said. I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward. Alex grinned, his respect for Jason clear. You got it, boss. Jason took one last glance around the dealership. The sleek cars, the gleaming showroom floor, the people now seeing him and their jobs a little differently than they had that morning. There was a lot of work ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. This wasn't just about running a dealership. It was about creating something bigger, a place where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. And Jason Carter was ready to lead the way. Jason Carter had proven a powerful point that day. Judgment can be costly, but change starts with accountability. Regency Motors would never be the same again. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories about leadership, business, and the power of second chances. And tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? Let's talk about it.